Okay, we're live streaming. Let me hit record. Okay, Cliff, it's all yours.
All right, this time I'd like to call to order the Town of Rochester Zoning Board of Appeals meeting of June 2020. Ms. Secretary, would you care to do a roll call?
Chair Mallory,
Present?
Mr. Sarth,
Present.
Mr. Fisher,
Present.
no Mr. Barron.
Okay, this time we have a quorum. We have 3 members. I'd like to read the following statement. I've confirmed with the Town's Council that tonight's meeting has been convened in accordance with the Governor's March 13th, 2020 Executive Order 202.1, which suspends certain provisions of the Open Meetings Law to allow a municipal board to convene a meeting via video conferencing. In accordance with the executive order, the public has been provided with the ability to view tonight's meeting via YouTube, and a transcript will be provided at a later date. The secretary has completed a roll call with the board members, and there is a quorum present for this meeting. I have also confirmed with the secretary that this meeting has been duly noticed. We have fulfilled our legal notice requirements by posting notice on the town clerk bulletin board and outside door, posting legal notice in the Shawmgum Journal, and posting notice on the town's website. Thank you. The first order of business, the first matter on our agenda is the continuing application of Mr. and Mrs. Stasek. At this time, why don't we open the public hearing?
Okay, I know there's 2 people not wanting to speak. Let me just check this other one. The person with the phone number ending in 7030, which application are you here for?
Boots.
Okay, we're going to mute you then. Thank you. I believe, Cliff, there are none.
Okay.
Just the one gentleman who wanted to hear what was happening with it. So,
All right. Well, let's make an announcement then. If there's any member of the public who wishes to speak in connection with the application of Mr. and Mrs. Stasek, please indicate, Mike, you indicate by how?
if they push *9 on their phone, it will show me that they're raising their hand.
By pushing *9 on your phone.
I'm seeing none.
Okay. All right. Is there a motion to close the public hearing?
Before you close the public hearing, Mr. Chairman, if you could just note that we do have one letter from a member of the public, Steve Fornell, submitted a letter. So if you can just make sure it's on record, that's part of the record.
Okay. I saw this morning a letter submitted by Steve Fornell. Have the other members of the board seen it? Mr. Saras?
Yes, I've seen it.
Mr.
Would
Fisher?
you like,
Yes.
Okay. And that is a matter, that is a part of our record.
right, do we need to read it into the record?
It's short. If you want to read it and you can, you don't have to.
And I don't have it handy.
Okay, hang on, I'll bring it up quickly. Da, 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 da. Bree, which email was that in? Sorry.
I think the subject was a letter from Mr. Fornell. Hang on.
Yeah, it's public comment from Mr. Fornell.
Yeah,
Yep.
I just have this Zoom meeting.
Let me find it if you'd like to read it. I have it here somewhere.
Yeah.
I have it.
One of the ones that was there previously in this month.
All right, Brianna has it. So Brianna, if you'd like to read it into the record.
Oh,
Please.
cool. All right. I just want to make sure the ZBA members recall that the Sussex essentially already have a 37.5% variance by virtue of their grandfathered non-conforming placement of their home 15 feet into the side yard setback. What is being requested is that the existing non-conformance be extended via new structure. I think this is troubling vis-a-vis precedent-setting potential. After all, this request for a deck is one of preference and convenience as to placement and certainly not one of necessity. Also, as a freestanding deck, it could be located elsewhere on the property. Plus, the request is for a 72.5% variance, which is extremely substantial. To maintain the integrity of the Town of Rochester zoning code, this application should be denied. Stephen Fornell, Accord, New York.
Okay.
Thank you, Bree.
No problem.
All right.
I just
There
wanted to, make it, go ahead.
Sorry, is it our turn to speak or?
Well, at this point, the public hearing is still open. We have apparently no members of the public wishing to comment. So I think we should probably close the public hearing next.
So I'll make a motion to close the public hearing on this
All right.
application.
All right, motion made by Mr. Saris. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
All right, seconded by Mr. Fisher. Bruce, are you in favor?
Yes.
Charlie?
Yes.
And I'm in favor, so the motion carries. Public hearing is closed. All right, Mr. and Mrs. Stasek, did you have something you wanted to add before we discuss
No,
this?
just wanted to be clear that, we are continuing our appeal for an area variance to allow the installation of what we're calling a freestanding deck of 149 square feet, which is very small, on the side of our yard adjacent to our home, so that we can have egress onto the deck from an existing door which was installed earlier, a great number of years ago. I just wanted to be clear that that's what all we're after, and I understand that the letter says that the 75%. That's not really the case.
72.
Hmm?
72.
72%, that's not the case here. But
Maybe
that's all we have to add to it.
we could be referencing an earlier petition version.
Perhaps, but it's neither here nor there, in my opinion. But that's the way it is. So that's all I wanted to add to it, is that we're just continuing to try and get a variance. And we had all the reasons before that we gave you, so you have all that. There's no reason to review all of that again.
Can I ask a question just for a clarification?
Yes.
I know in the last meeting, we discussed reapproaching Jerry Davis to ask if the size of the deck was reduced to 144 square feet, if that would require a permit or a variance at 144 square feet. Did you have the opportunity to meet with Jerry about that?
No, we did not. 144. We did not approach Jerry with that.
But
Because that's only a 5 square foot difference. Basically, at that size, if you trim about 1.5 inches around the perimeter, you pretty much chop off 5 square feet. I think there may be value in asking him that question. I'm not sure what the answer is, but it would help provide some definition to you and might provide an alternative or not, right?
Right,
Okay.
right.
All right, thank you.
If you're going to go that route, then you should have perhaps a little broader discussion with Mr. Davis about where, since this is now a freestanding deck, where you can situate the deck where a variance might not be needed.
Well, he has given me that information previously. He needs it to be 12 feet from the house.
Okay,
So, we went into all that the last meeting.
right.
Being 12 feet from the house doesn't make any sense. We
But
are,
was that 12 feet at the existing size, or was that 12 feet at the reduced size?
that was 12 feet at the
Regardless.
149 square.
Right.
But he
And that-
made it clear that that was regardless of the size of the deck, that would have to be,
Okay.
12 feet away. So,
Okay,
you can still ask that one question on the 144 square feet.
Right.
That's not, that wouldn't be an issue for us to trim the deck by that much.
Right. Well, I guess with that, would you like to put this back for another month while so you have some time to confirm with him?
We're losing a lot of time, on the build for this too. We've been at this for how long now? I don't
Yeah.
know when we first approached the variance committee on this, but,
It's been a long time. Yeah.
for something that's really kind of a sight unseen kind of scenario here.
Right.
I have figured
And-
that we just not having it, and that's, so pretty much I have given up hope. All of his still.
The board has, now that you've closed the public hearing, you have 62 days to make a decision. If you were to make a decision tonight, it would have to be a unanimous decision because you need not a majority of the people present, but a majority of what the full board would be. So you need 3 votes.
Right.
So if you're not sure, you may want to wait. It's at the board's discretion whether or not you're ready to make that decision.
Okay. Are there any other questions of any of the board, from any of the board members? No.
Nothing further here.
Okay. In view of the fact that you indicated you're going to talk to Mr. Davis about a slight reduction in the size of the deck, I propose that we put this off for one more month, at which time we have we have time to make our decision, and you will have time to have talked to Mr. Davis.
Okay,
All right.
I think we need probably a motion for that.
Actually, you don't, if you don't get a motion to either approve or deny, you don't need a motion to put it off for a month
Okay,
because you have 62 days.
okay. All right. Well, thank you very much, Mr. and Mrs. Stasek.
thank
You're
you.
welcome. Good night.
Good night.
Good night. All right, the next matter on our agenda is the application of Borrego Solar.
Hi, good evening.
Mr. Smith, you're here on behalf of Borrego Solar.
I am, yep,
Okay.
and the landowner, Mr. and Mrs. Paddock.
As I recall, at the last meeting, we held a public hearing. The public hearing was closed.
Yes.
Okay. Is there anything more that you have to add?
No, nothing of substance. Just kind of, I would like to hammer home the fact that this proposal has really no negative externalities to the neighborhood or neighboring abutters. So I really appreciate the board considering approving this.
All right. All right. So the application is in connection with a movement of the southwestern property line, approximately 35 to 50 feet to the northeast, reducing the size of the lot to 1.393 acres.
Correct. An existing non-conforming lot, slightly non-conforming.
Okay. Are there any questions from the board members?
No, I have none.
Mr. Saras?
I have none.
Okay. Are there any motions?
I have a motion written, Cliff. Can I email that to everyone?
Well,
Review?
I'm afraid that I will lose everything if I try to play with the
Okay.
computer.
So then,
So, you
right.
know, if you would care to make the motion, I don't think you have to recite all the procedural history here or the evidentiary history.
Okay. I'll keep it short and sweet then.
Great.
Okay, great. So the motion by Borrego on the paddocks was an application that proposed an area variance that would create an increase in non-conforming use. The documents that we considered in this appeal were the maps, the area variance zoning permit, the variance application, and Mr. Fornell's letter to the ZBA regarding Borrego, and Paddock. So with that, the first question is whether an undesirable change will be produced in the character of the neighborhood or a detriment to nearby properties will be created by granting the area variance. What I'm motioning is that it's a no. The finding is that the setback requirements will not be reduced beyond the current code requirement for lot 69 3-2-22. The lot line adjustment would not decrease the front yard setback. Only the side setback would be impacted with a shift from approximately 80 feet to approximately 45 feet. This is within the side yard setback required by code of 40 feet. There is no proposed change in the use of the lots. The second question is whether the benefits sought by the applicant can be achieved by some method feasible for the applicant to pursue other than an area variance. The tick box is no. The finding is the zoning board asked the applicant to consider moving the lot lines in the opposite direction to achieve the objective of placing the easement within a single lot. The applicant reviewed the suggestion and indicated although the area variance would be less from a percentage standpoint, the outcome would simply shift the nonconformance from one lot, 22, to the other lot, 23. Whether the requested variance is substantial, the tick box is no. The variance requested is substantial at 24.7%. Whether the proposed variance will have an adverse effect or impact on the physical or environmental conditions in the neighborhood or district, the tick box is no. Granting the variance would have little to no effect either in a positive or negative way on the physical or environmental conditions. Whether the alleged difficulty was self-created, which consideration shall be relevant to the decision of the Board of Appeals, but shall not necessarily preclude the granting of the area variance. The tick box is yes. The granting of the easement by the applicant was a self-created difficulty. Determination based on the above factors, it's hereby determined the Town of Rochester Zoning Board of Appeals, the request for area variance is approved.
All right, so your motion is to approve the request for the variance.
That's correct.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
All right, so the motion has been seconded by Mr. Fisher. Is there any discussion?
No, not here.
Okay. Mr. Saras, how do you vote on the motion?
I vote aye.
Mr. Fisher?
Aye.
And I vote also aye. So the motion carries. The variance is granted.
Thank you very much. I appreciate all the time you guys have spent on this.
You're welcome.
And Brianna, I'll email you this so that you have it for the record. Huh?
Thank you.
Yep.
All right, the next matter on our agenda is the application of Allison and Sean Hoots. And that is for a variance in the size of a home occupation space. from, I believe, 500 to 784 square feet, is it?
Yes.
All right. Let's see. So at the last meeting, the public hearing was open for 7 days for a response to a letter that was submitted by the Hootses with 3 additional days for response. So by the timeline indicated, the public hearing is closed. I believe we got both a response and a SIR reply from the Hootses with respect to the letter. Okay. So, the public hearing having been closed, do any members of the board have questions for the applicant?
I have not seen the 2 letters that came in that we had left the hearing open for.
I believe they were on the Google Drive submitted, yeah.
Okay. Let me jump there then.
Yeah, they came in at the end of May.
At the end of,
May.
oh, then I thought it just came in the last, since,
No, their
Yeah.
deadlines were
yeah, okay.
for the neighbors 1 week after our last meeting, and
Right.
then the applicant had 3 days to reply. So it was right around Memorial Day that everything came in.
Okay.
I have May 29th and June 1st.
June 1st, okay.
Mhm.
All right. Okay. So,
If you'd like to take a moment to look at that, Bruce.
May 29th. Yeah, let me just skim it real quickly.
Okay, for the record, I've seen the reply and the SIR reply.
Yep. Okay. June 1st. Okay. All right, Cliff, we can continue.
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah.
Are there any questions, first of all? Mr. Fisher?
No.
All right, Mr. Saris?
I have none at this point.
Okay. So in making our determination, the board considers a number of factors. And I'd like to go through those factors and perhaps have a little discussion concerning those factors. The first is whether an undesirable change will be produced in the character of the neighborhood or a detriment to nearby properties will be created by the granting of the area variance. Are there any comments or thoughts with regard to the first factor?
No.
Well,
Well,
so I think, you know, a recording studio is listed as a special use in the schedule of district regulations in AR3, ARB, and in the I zoning district. You know, it's not listed in an R2 zone. And I believe its exclusion is specific in this case, that because it's excluded, it's not a permitted use in an R2 zone. And to just simply call it a home occupation and is a bit effectively saying that if I simply title something a home occupation and put it along with an area variance, I'm going to be allowed to do it. You know, that will open the gates for those kind of applications.
If it's all right, Bruce, at first I'd like to go through the factors.
Sure.
And so if we could discuss, because we've had a great deal of testimony, both in the public hearing and in written submissions, both in support of and in opposition to this application. And it seemed to me that most of those submissions had to do with potential changes in the neighborhood, in the character of the neighborhood.
Right.
So I think it's fair to say that with respect to consideration one, we've had quite a bit of discussion from the public and in fact conflicting views to some degree.
Agreed.
Okay. Is there anything you want to add to that, either of you?
I think some of the factors that came out are things that the town can't control or shouldn't control. Things like the traffic increase. You know, I'm not sure we have the ability to regulate traffic volume on a given road. In addition, it's a private road. It's not a town maintained road too. So, you know, I think that pushes it a little further on that spectrum.
Right. I agree with that. I think that a great deal of what we heard perhaps on both sides has to do with things that would perhaps exist whether there was a recording studio or not. But so we should focus on the things that the impact on the neighborhood that would be attributable to a recording studio.
Right. Like the sound.
Well, the noise for one, yeah.
Right. Yep.
I think, you know, for purposes of our discussion, I'd like to read into the record the definition of a home occupation. Any use customarily conducted entirely within a principal structure and/or other structure accessory thereto, and carried on by the inhabitants thereof, which use is clearly incidental and secondary to the principal use and does not change the character thereof. And there's a reference to section 140.19 for further description of home occupation by class. And in section 140.19, it discusses the three categories, three classes of home occupation, 1, 2, and 3. The one we're talking about here is 2. So those are both the support and the opposition that we should consider, things that are impacted in particular by a home occupation. Sorry, I'm flipping back and forth. All right, any other comments with respect to changes in the neighborhood? All right, the second is whether the benefits sought by the applicants can be achieved by some method feasible for the applicant to pursue other than an area variance.
Well, certainly reducing the square footage is one avenue they could take, although I haven't heard any comments from the applicants in looking to reduce the size of it. They also have the opportunity to apply for a use variance.
Okay. All right, Mr. Fisher, any comments?
No, I don't have anything right now.
Okay. All right, the next consideration is whether the requested area variance is substantial. So a class 2 occupation in the table of, I think, permits up to 500 square feet for a class 2 occupation in an R2 zone.
That's correct.
Okay, so the requested variance is for an additional 284 feet, I believe.
Right.
Which is approximately a little over 50%,
56.8.
right? Which is a
Over
substantial,
56.8.
a substantial variance.
Right, and Cliff, it frankly even exceeds the class 3 home occupation.
Which I
Square
believe was what,
footage.
750?
That's correct.
Okay,
So it's pushing beyond that threshold as well.
okay,
And in the R2 district, a class 3 home occupation is not a permissible use. So you can't go up to class 3 in an R2. But this is even exceeds the class 3 square footage.
okay. Any other comments? All right, the fourth consideration is whether the proposed variance will have an adverse effect or impact on the physical or environmental conditions in the neighborhood or district. I'm not sure how to answer that one. The fact is, it's the home office is in or the home occupation is in a self-contained building.
That's already been built.
Right,
It's an existing structure.
right,
So the footprint isn't expanding.
right,
And the exterior of the building, there's no proposed changes to the exterior of the building either,
right.
right? But
So do you
I don't
see
know
any
whether-
impact?
so do you consider a physical or environmental the noise?
You could.
Oh,
On the other
okay.
hand, I can't imagine any occupation, or there are very few occupations that don't involve some noise.
Well, that's a good point. However, the code section that you were quoting for class 2 occupation, I think it's 140-19, says that there would be no detectable noise at the property lines. And the applicant's sound engineer performed noise test studies at, I believe it was 5 different points at the property line, and found the change was anywhere from 6 decibels increase to an 8 decibel point increase at the property line. Now, this was a document submitted by the applicant, along with, contained in that document also was the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation that says the human reaction to ambient sound increase of 5 to 10 decibels is considered intrusive. This was in the applicant's own submission. So from a, is it detectable? Certainly if the DEC considers it intrusive, I think there is an impact on the environment or the physical nature in that area.
All right. On the other hand, I have a neighbor who's an opera singer. And I believe she keeps her windows closed, but I don't know that she has to.
Right.
And the noise would be detectable.
And is she applying for an area variance?
No,
Well,
I'm trying to think of the practical impact of things that happen in the home. I mean,
yeah, my neighbor's a drummer.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I have a neighbor who is a chainsaw carver.
Right.
He's a very considerate chainsaw carver, but it makes some noise.
Right.
I have a
Okay.
neighbor that cuts wood.
Sorry?
I have a neighbor that cuts uses chainsaw most every day over here right next to me. And if somebody's mowing the lawn, that's gonna be a lot more noise than that studio, as far as I'm concerned. Because it's all soundproof.
Right. So right now we're focused on whether the proposed variance will have an adverse effect or impact on the physical or environmental conditions in the neighborhood. And it seemed to me for purposes of this particular section, It looks like efforts have been made to soundproof the building. And while noise may be detectable, does it have an adverse effect or impact on the physical or environmental conditions? This is an issue completely separate from the definition of home occupation, where we might take a slightly different view of it, if you see the distinction.
Well, so do you consider the opera singer and chainsaw carver intrusive?
I mean, I like them, and I think she's a good singer. And I actually have an owl that my neighbor chainsawed for me out of a tree stump here. I can see how it certainly could, but both neighbors have made efforts to minimize.
Right. But they're also, Cliff, and I appreciate.
We're just discussing, Bruce. So
Yeah.
I'm just throwing things out there.
Yeah, I understand that, but both of those folks are not before the zoning board seeking an area variance, and I think that's a key distinction in determining whether it's intrusive or not. If they were here asking for a home occupation, and they said, "Well, how loud do you sing?" and we measured how loud they sang at the property line, I don't think the type of occupation, whether it's wood carver or opera singer or sound recording studio, noise is noise regardless of how it's generated. And it doesn't, the ordinance doesn't read, if it's birds singing, it's okay. It says it's if it's detectable. And the applicant's engineer submitted a study, he's the expert, that showed it was detectable at the property line. That's the facts in it.
Okay. All right. Any other comments or discussion?
I have none.
Okay. And the last factor that we consider is whether the alleged difficulty was self-created, which consideration shall be relevant to the decision of the Zoning Board of Appeals, but shall not necessarily preclude the granting of the area variance. So to me, it's fairly obvious that it was self-created in that the structure was built, the recording studio was laid out, and then the area variance was requested. So.
Right. Yep. And the applicant in one of the documents submitted states the same, that it was a self-created hardship, difficulty. So.
Right. But again, these are just factors that we have to consider.
Right, that's right.
Okay. I have a suggestion, and that is we have the next agenda item is very closely related to this one. And perhaps some of the discussion of that might impact our decision in this application. So I would suggest we table discussion unless anyone has anything further to add or any questions to ask. And we table further discussion of the Hoots application until after we've considered the next application.
Chairman, I apologize. May I just interrupt for one moment?
It's
No.
up to you, Chairman, but the public hearing's over. Generally, if the board has questions, you could ask them, but we generally don't take more evidence after the public hearing's closed.
Right.
I simply wanted to point to evidence, not bring new
Well,
evidence.
that's their job to look through it. You've made
Right.
your,
Thank
You
you for
guys
the
have-
offer, but we've seen a lot of evidence at this point. I think we have a good understanding of the situation.
And frankly, I think I would like to go through some of this one last time after we've had our discussion.
Right.
But I mean, I have looked at everything that's been submitted at least once. I've underlined, I've highlighted, I've read and reread, I've taken notes. I've asked written down questions. I've spent quite a bit, and I'm sure the other members have too, spent quite a bit of time reviewing everything that's been submitted here, and quite a bit has been submitted here. I suspect there's nothing that we're not thoroughly familiar with and haven't considered in detail.
Right. Cliff, I would agree. There's something like 39 or 40 documents out here for us that we've reviewed at this point, all of which are detailed and all of which we've given, thoughtful consideration and a thoughtful read through. I think your suggestion that we take an extra month, we have the time, we're not in a time constraint to make a decision this evening, that we take that time, we go back, we review it a little more thoroughly again, just to be sure. This is a large decision, a lot of impacts here. I don't think there's anything wrong with taking a little extra time to make sure that we feel comfortable with it.
And I think
I'm sorry.
Go ahead. I think it would be valuable in light of having now had a conversation and hearing one another's thought processes to go back and review all of these many submittals again, keeping in mind other viewpoints that may have been brought up tonight by fellow board members.
And frankly, I'd be more comfortable after hearing our discussion with respect to the next application, the appeal of the Catalpa Lane neighbors. And I don't know if in any way that would impact our decision, but I do think they're so closely related that we need to consider each as we decide the other.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't find that unreasonable.
Mary Lou, do you think we need a motion to
No,
table this?
No, you don't. You have,
Okay.
Till next month easily. You'll easily make your deadline. I mean, you can make it if you're more comfortable with it. So it's clear on the record that it was tabled. Should we ever have a challenge? Not going to hurt.
Okay. So I move we table this matter until after consideration of the Catalpa Lane appeal and after we've had time to compare and contrast the two. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
All right, motion has been seconded by Mr. Fisher. Mr. Saris, are you in favor or against?
Aye.
Aye. Mr. Fisher?
Aye.
And I vote aye also. So we're going to table this matter. And we'll now take up the application of the Catalpa Lane neighbors. All right. With respect to the Catalpa Lane neighbors, that public hearing was also held open for 7 days for a response to the letter from the sound engineer, I guess it was, and 3 days for response. That time period has expired. We got submissions and reply submissions, which are in the record and which we have considered. So that public hearing is now closed. And we, I guess at this point, should discuss that application.
Okay.
Can I just comment that what you do here is you put yourselves in the place of the code enforcement official at the time you got the application and look at the evidence before you to determine whether he made the correct decision. You can substitute your decision for his decision if you think that he made an incorrect decision. So now we have a bunch of people being the code enforcement officer together.
Okay. So with respect to the Catalpa Lane appeal, there are 5 different bases for that appeal that are enumerated in a letter written by Ms. Svensson on
I'm sorry, did
behalf
I?
of the Catalpa Lane neighbors, dated March 25th of this year. And so we should discuss these different bases based upon those 5 considerations that are set forth in the code, section 14066C. The first one is that a use variance is required to establish the proposed commercial use. Now, I think, Bruce, as you mentioned earlier, in AR3, AB3, and industrial districts, a recording studio is a special use. And the business district, it's a principal use. And it's not mentioned in an R2 district.
That's right.
And section 140-8, large capital A, in relevant part.
So Cliff, if I could interrupt you just quickly, I seem to have lost Mary Lou on this. Is she still there?
Yeah.
I see her. Okay, I see your picture. I don't see any movement. So I just wanted to be sure
I'm
that I
playing
didn't.
statue.
Yeah, no,
Well-
she's moving around. She seems to be bobbing and weaving quite nicely.
Okay. Then it's
All right.
me. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mary Lou.
No problem.
Okay. Yep. Cliff, I'm sorry.
Okay. Um,
140-8.
mhm.
Yeah. And which letter were you looking at? I'm sorry, A?
I think it was capital A.
Yeah, okay.
So down, about midway down, it says, this shall not permit the reclassification of uses that are already listed, nor
That's
shall the
right.
town board permit any use that is not listed in a particular district if that use is already permitted in another district.
Correct.
So
So-
the process is you can, if it's not mentioned, you can apply for a special use. You can go to the planning board.
Right.
However, if a particular use is mentioned in other districts, then you can't do that.
Right. And even the town board can't
Right.
override the zoning or planning board on that.
All right. So I guess the question that the appeal presents is whether or not a use variance is required to establish the proposed commercial use in an R2 district.
Right.
All right. Any discussion?
So, Charlie, I don't want to cut you off there, Charlie, if you have something. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, Bruce.
So in this situation, clearly the recording studio is a commercial use. We talked about private commercial and donations, and the IRS has a term for donations when you're not a charity, and it's called taxable income, right? So this is a commercial enterprise. Whether or not it's a home occupation is one of the questions as well, right? Is it considered a home occupation? And I'd like to hear your thoughts on whether it could be considered a home occupation or not.
Well, I think, it raises a number of questions in my mind about exactly what you can do with your property and what you can't. And the section that deals with home occupations talks about things that are customarily located in the house,
Right.
things that are incidental or reasonable to the use of the house. So, this is something that has, that I've been tossing back and forth since this application first came before us. Playing music in the house is about as customary as you can get. I do it all the time. I do it on my stereo. I do it on my computer. I've attempted to make music. I have attempted to learn and play the mandolin and the harmonica with no success. In fact, the harmonica really offended the dog, and so I had to give that up. But I tried anyway. And I think I certainly have a customer. It's customary to do things like that.
Right.
I've had teachers come over to teach me how to play the mandolin. And I can see, look, we have, our neighborhood has, like hootenannies where people get together and they play music, lots of people. Anybody on the block with an musical instrument, including one guy with a wash tub and a piece of cord who thumps away. I mean, people like to make music. It happens all the time. I also have a tape recorder in my house, and I can record things on my computer. If I wanted to record my harmonica or my mandolin, I could do that, right? Things like making music, listening to music, even recording music, to me seem fairly customary and the kinds of things that you do in your home.
But are you doing it? And the question I'll come back to, just to reel you in, are you doing it commercially or are you doing it for your own benefit? So if you recall, I'm going to say a year and a half ago, we had a variance application. And I don't recall the specific thing, but I do recall one of the findings was a court case where just because I keep a pet pony in my house doesn't make me a stable, right? It was a very simple decision by a judge. However, when you start charging people to keep the ponies at your house, then you become a stable. So I think there's a line that gets crossed, Cliff, between personal use and commercial use in that.
Yes, I agree. I think the question is, where is that line? For instance, if you have a tape recorder or a recording studio, and you invite people in, and let's say it's me, I don't really play a musical instrument, but I invite someone in to play a musical instrument so that I can record it and use that recording commercially. That's, to me, different from recording my own music, even recording my own music if I were a member of a group. And, so can I do that? Can I record my own music? Can I record my music with another or other musicians? And can I, if that's what I've done, and I haven't invited people in and recorded their music without participating, can I do that?
So I think,
again, I'm struggling with
so you're asking
what you
where
can
the
do
line,
and what you can't do.
right? So where's the line delineated? And I think the line is delineated in the schedule of district regulations that says a recording studio is okay in AR3, AB3, and the I, right? I think that's where you're looking for that definition. I think that definition is there.
Well, so Bruce, let me ask a question then.
So and if you recall, we told the applicant back in, I'm going to say it was November, December, January timeframe, that personal use is okay. That's what you're talking about in your situation is personal use, not commercial use.
Right.
Once you cross the line to commercial, the schedule of regulations is what defines whether it's acceptable or not, or permissible or not acceptable.
When you say personal use, can personal use also be commercial?
No.
So
not in my mind. Okay,
so
it sounded I didn't mean to be that brusque with it, but not in my mind, no. There's a delineation between personal and commercial. One is for financial gain, right?
By the, all right, by that, do you mean, and this is what I'm trying to understand.
Yeah.
If Mr. Hoots records a song,
Yep.
can he try to sell that song? It's his song. He's the only musician who has played on that particular recording. Can he sell that?
He was there personally. It was just him. That was
Right.
his personal use. And he's looking to benefit from it financially. That's fine. That didn't
Right.
include other folks coming in and working alongside, right? And even the district regulations for a class 2 occupation permits one employee, right? Because that regulation with one employee certainly is focused on an increasing traffic where you have several employees coming in. I think the intent of that regulation is to limit the amount of traffic coming into a home office, a home occupation. So, you know,
So you're saying that if Mr. Hoots, or anyone for that matter, plays a solo, that's fine, but if it's a duet, it's not fine?
I'm saying once you start using it for commercial rather than personal, that the regulations, the schedule of district regulations are the deciding schedule,
Right.
deciding factor.
But we've said that he can record a solo recording. Let's say
Well-
him playing the banjo or whatever instrument he
Yes.
chooses to play.
Yeah, it doesn't
And-
matter.
Right?
Right.
And he can sell that. We've agreed on that? And that is commercial, isn't it?
It is.
But you're saying
And
that if
I would
he,
think that that's a fine line. I think that's stepping over. Now you're commercial, even if it's just you. It's commercial,
okay,
right?
okay.
I got a question.
Good.
You're a member of a band. You come over to the house and practice the band. Then you go out and play someplace. You're making money off that band.
Right.
Isn't that the same thing?
No,
Why not?
because you're earning the money at the site you're playing. You're not earning the money by practicing.
Yeah, but if you don't practice, you're not to make the money.
That's still your option to practice or not.
Well, from a practical perspective, though, if you don't practice, you're not going to make much money.
Right.
There's other people.
Okay, but I think we're getting off on a tangent here, right? I think, practicing is something you're earning the money at the site you're performing at. You're not earning money performing at the practice facility. So let's look at it this way. If you're a golfer, right? Are you getting paid at the driving range? No, you're getting paid the day of the tournament by performing.
Okay.
So I think, Charlie, I think there's value in what you're saying, that, we're assembling people to practice. Why is that different? It's different because you're not recording at that place and not generating that's not the source of the financial transaction, is not at that site. It's where the venue that you're playing at.
Well, could you argue that you've made the recording, you don't sell it out of your house, you're going to take it somewhere else to sell it, so you're not going to make the money until you go to let's say, a music producer.
Right.
I mean, is that a valid argument?
I think we're going down a lot of ifs and buts on this, Cliff. I think, that I fully appreciate the, you know, the testing of the theories, right? But there's a, you know, the situations that can arise are well beyond what we could list and enumerate, right?
Well, again, this
For
is
all
discussion.
For all classes of home occupation, 1, 2, and 3, I believe. I mean, what we're talking about is business or commercial in a residence. So
Right.
it's contemplated on any home occupation. That's what it is.
Right. Okay.
And again, Bruce, we're throwing out ideas. I'm grappling with the issues of what you can do and what you can't do.
Right.
And I think,
And all I'm
that-
saying is that with the can and can'ts, we can just keep going forever on, is this good? Is this bad? Is this good? Is this good? Is this good? You know, that's not, I don't think that will get us to the answer or to a conclusion that we want to get to.
well, I was hoping it would, frankly. I was
Yeah.
hoping
Oh,
that
okay.
in our discussions, we would get to a point where we could reach a decision as to what exactly could be done and what couldn't.
Right. Right.
Maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, I just think we'd keep spinning around. What about this situation and that situation?
Well,
But you're
Right.
putting yourself in the place of the building inspector, and that's what he's got to look at.
That's right. So what is, okay, so let's focus strictly on that then. So the building inspector sees this application coming in and decides whether this is a class 2 home occupation or not, right? Before the area variance granting, was the CEO correct in saying this is a class 2 occupation? Is that what you're driving at, Mary Lou?
That's the question. Yes, that's the question. That's what the appeal is based on.
Right.
okay. All right, maybe we should move on, although we're all just kind of on a theme. All right, we've discussed the issue of whether or not it creates detectable noise.
All right.
So another area of appeal is that this is not a class 2 home occupation essentially because of the size of the area and the use of
Right.
mechanical equipment. With a class 3 home occupation, that's up to 750 square feet. And there is no prohibition, as I recall, of the use of mechanical equipment.
Right. Cliff, as you're speaking, I'm just jumping to that regulations in section 19. So, same definition as class 2, no more than 2 on-site employees, family members residing in the dwelling.
And just so we can discuss this and make it a part of the record, but before, when we were discussing a second musician, there was some discussion about whether or not that was an employee. So would your contention be that a second musician who came to Mr. Hoots's house to perform would be an employee?
I think, Cliff, where I'm going with it is that the intent of limiting the number of employees is intended to limit the number of people on site taking part in that commercial activity. Limit another on site other than family members, right? So, you know, because family members typically would reside in the same dwelling. They're not creating additional noise, additional traffic by coming in and out of work. You know, we heard the term collaboration and collaborator, you know, several times in the discussions that came up, you know, over several meetings. And, you know, in my view, that's what business is. Business is collaboration. You don't succeed in business if you don't collaborate, you know. So whether you categorize it as an employee, as a vendor, as a client, you know, that's what collaboration is. That's how you generate, you know, business.
Okay.
So I also wonder if when the application was presented to Jerry, if in seeing that the square footage requirement was higher than 750, if he should not have looked at it, that it didn't meet the definition of class 2, and he should have said it was a class 3. Where in that application do we feel that it might have not been a class 3, that it would have been a class 2?
Well, at this point, I don't think we have been presented. Well, we've been presented with that issue on the appeal.
Right. Well, that's what this is. That's what we're talking about now, right?
Right. Right. Well, part of our duty is to consider, I guess, an issue just like this.
Right. So, and this is the situation in this, and I kind of hit on it when we were talking about the application prior, was, you know, you can't merely change the class of your home occupation and ask for an area variance for additional square footage. To me, that seems like a, you know, and I don't mean to imply this was deliberate, but you know, there's intent and there's impact, right? So I don't think that intent was nefarious, but the impact certainly is going around the requirement of 500 square feet to get 750 without going up in class, right? So this would open it up to a lot of other potential home occupations that want to expand or enlarge by just saying, I'm a class 2, but I'd like 600 square feet or 750 or 800, rather than jump up in weight class and jump up to a class 3. It also says, if I'm defined in another zone, if I just call my business a home occupation, then I can go and do it where I want. If chainsaw carving was only permitted in an ag zone, well, I'm a home occupation chainsaw carver. Now I can do it next door to Cliff, right? So I think there's a, you know, in looking at it in those terms, I think Jerry should be aware of that kind of impact on the decision that he presented.
Okay. Charlie, thoughts or comments?
No, I don't have any right now.
Okay. Any further discussion?
Well, I think like the prior application, if we can consider, we don't have the time constraint for this month. If we can consider it for a while longer, I think that would be of benefit, certainly for me. I don't know if, for you and Charlie, if you feel the same way.
Well, I think we've raised a number of issues. We've sort of tussled with them. I'm not sure that we've come to any firm conclusions with respect to them, but they're certainly out there. And I think a little more time might be useful for us to maybe firm up our views of this and be in a position to make a decision. Mary Lou, do you have anything to add?
You're muted.
You're on mute.
I know, I just got a message that said you're muted, you idiot. No, I mean, you have, again, lots of material from both parties on this. That same thing as with the last application. After listening to one another's ideas and viewpoints, you might want to go back and look at it all again. And we do have time. A decision can be made next month.
Can you think of any issues that we have missed?
That's a great question.
Anything we ought to explore that we haven't?
You know what? I'm gonna look at it all again as well. And attorney's advice on something like this, I'd rather give that to you
Okay.
outside rather than on a
Well, that's fine.
YouTube
That's
telecast.
fine. Well,
So if I
that's
pick
our
up other
job.
things, I will
All right.
send an attorney's memo to.
Well, that's
all of
our
you folks.
job, is to make sure that we've considered every issue and that we haven't missed something. So I think what we ought to do is take the time between now and the next meeting to review the things we've heard tonight, the matters that have been discussed, the issues that have been raised, and give it some deep thought.
Yeah.
So, Mary Lou, do we need a motion to continue discussion, or?
You can make a motion to table till the next meeting.
Okay,
So I'll make a motion to table the discussion till the next meeting, the decision till the next meeting.
I'll second it.
all right. And Bruce, are you in favor?
Aye.
Charlie?
Yes.
And I'm in favor. So we'll table discussion until the next meeting. In the interim, I'd encourage you all, and I know you will, to go back, review the materials, review what notes you have of our discussion tonight, and to be prepared to renew our discussion.
And I don't know why Bill couldn't make it tonight. I don't know what happened, but Brianna, if you could, or Cliff, remind him that he can easily look at everything that happened tonight, because he can look at the YouTube
Right.
meeting. And to please do that so that he can be prepared to discuss and vote at the next meeting as well.
Okay. Great, thank you. I don't have the agenda handy, but is there anything else on our agenda for this evening?
Minutes,
Minutes?
that's it.
You know,
Do you want to table that because you'll probably abstain and we'll only have 2 people to vote?
It's a good
That's
idea.
enough. Two can
Okay.
pass it.
All right, so why
That's
don't we
a
table that
majority.
also? I looked at them briefly and I had a couple of, I think, a couple of issues with what I saw, but. All right, any other business?
I'll make a
Motion
motion
to
to
adjourn.
adjourn. Motion to adjourn?
I'll second it.
All right, Bruce,
Yes.
Charlie,
Yes.
and I vote aye also, so motion carries. Thank you all very much.
Good night,
Thank you.
everybody. Good night,
Thank
Carol.
you.
Good night.
Thank you,
Good night,
everybody.
Carol.
Thank you, Mike.
Yep.
Good
Hey,
night.
real quick, possibly next month, we might be able to meet in person pending the
Yeah.
governor, so.
I
Good.
hope
Oh,
so.
Yeah, if we're at,
We will keep you posted.
if we're at stage 3, we can have 25 gatherings, so maybe, we'll see.
And you still have to maintain distance and wear masks though, yes?
Yeah, and
Correct.
everybody has
Yeah.
to make sure, they start showering again before meetings.
Darn.
Take care, everybody.
I don't think we need a motion